President Trump calling his shot in the culture war when it comes to the national anthem and football. He says he's going to win this one. Listen to just how he stoked the crowd in Montana just before the kickoff for the NFL on Thursday.
From Colin Kaepernick to the NFL to now Nike, who's going to win this cultural showdown of standing for the anthem? We are.
That new ad campaign from Nike featuring Colin Kaepernick throwing a little fuel on the fire for there, triggering some fiery responses. Folks protesting Nike's decision on social media, ripping the swooshes from their socks, some burning their own Nike shoes and clothing. As for what happened on Thursday, no players took a knee during the season opener. As you see, 2 Eagles players did decide to sit down toward the end of the anthem. Joining me now, former NFL wide receiver Dante Stallworth and CNN contributor Mark Lamont Hill, who's also a professor at Temple University. This is what a Nike vice president had to say this week. Quote, "We believe Colin is one of the most inspirational athletes of this generation who has leveraged the power of sport to help move the world forward." Dante, Colin Kaepernick's position hasn't changed since day one. What do you think changed for Nike?
Well, I think they obviously saw this as a good business opportunity for them. That's what all mega businesses do. They look at what's best for their bottom line. But I also believe that they felt that there was something that this was something that they could get behind, and they obviously had done the research. Nike is a huge brand. It's a global marketing titan, and so it understands that they may have taken an initial hit, but as we've all seen today and yesterday, that that stock has risen even more now, with jumping 31% just over the Labor Day weekend when they first announced this. So Nike understood what they were doing. They knew they were going to continue to alienate some people who weren't going to be happy with it. But I think overall, from a global standpoint, this thing is bigger than just the United States. They're taking this global brand on a global message, and I think it resonates throughout the world, not just here in the United States.
Which is an important perspective, too, to point that out, that we are talking about a global company, obviously. Mark, when we look at this, there's so much talk in this country about how polarized everything is, and that for many companies, perhaps that should be a sign that they shouldn't step up and weigh in. But we even saw recently airlines saying we are not going to fly separated children. More companies are starting to take a stand. Why do you think that is, Mark, that the tides are changing and they're saying, you know what, here's where we're at. You don't like it? All right, fine. Don't like it.
Well, first, to Dante's point, I think we never want to romanticize companies and corporations. They don't have feelings. Corporations have interests. And if they thought that they would lose money, if they thought that they would minimize shareholder wealth rather than maximizing it, they wouldn't do that. Mm-hmm. But what they're also learning is that people do want companies to take strong stances. In the same way that we learned in the presidential election in 2016, that populism works and that people want people who take a strong stance, even if it's on one end or the other. And so the idea that, a company won't fly separated children, or that they'll actually stand behind someone like Colin Kaepernick, who is a hero and a freedom fighter, shouldn't be surprising to us. Because despite the fact that there are people burning their Nikes or people who want to build a wall, most Americans want justice. Most Americans can rationalize the idea of saying that getting down on one knee during the anthem to protest police terrorism is not a bad thing. And so ultimately, I think Nike realizes that the American people are behind Colin Kaepernick. They're behind not separating families, et cetera, et cetera. And so for me, it's Nike using good logic and good judgment. And Nike has a long history of being problematic in terms of labor, but also being receptive to ideas that black people can lead campaigns all the way back to Jordan in the 80s. So Nike's very sophisticated here.
Dante, is there a message here for athletes?
Yeah, I think the message here is simple. It's the same, and I'm not comparing Colin Kaepernick to Muhammad Ali, obviously, here to get that clear, but I think the message is clear, is to stand up for what you believe in. And there are a lot of players who want to do this and really may not have had the financial backing to be able to do this, or unfortunately the moral courage. But there are a lot of number of reasons why players decide to stand and why players decide to kneel. But I would say that Nike has really understood this from a historical perspective of they want to be on the right side of history. And the NFL so far has not really done that. And this thing will always go. I always say, you look at all the players who were chastised and who were criticized for taking a stand against wars, taking a stand against poverty, taking a stand against whatever they believed in. They were always criticized at the time, but history always vindicated these players. They always vindicated these players. They said the players who threw up a black fist down in the 1968 Olympics in Mexico City. They said that was a Nazi-like salute. And those players have obviously been vindicated. It was months after Martin Luther King was assassinated, and the Vietnam War was, underway, and it was a bad war. And those guys were protesting all of those things. And so I think at the end of the day, history will vindicate Colin Kaepernick, if not already.
Mark, the president
I
really
just want to
wanted
add
to
real
push
quick,
this.
though.
Yeah.
Just real quick, I agree with everything that was just said, but we also want to make sure that history doesn't vindicate Colin Kaepernick and say, we were wrong to take away his career. Colin Kaepernick is still unemployed. We want to make sure that he gets a job. We want to make sure that the league doesn't continue to blackball him, because he's not just a freedom fighter and a hero. He's also a very capable quarterback who deserves to be working.
Mark, the president has really tried to push this as a culture war, but do you think with what we're seeing from Nike, and this, yes, it is a business decision, but at the end of the day, Mark, do you think this could start to change the conversation in the country on a broader, in a broader way?
Absolutely. Throughout history, we've always had these cultural interventions, these moments where a shift in the public sphere can lead to a shift in the political dimension of the public sphere. So, yeah, I absolutely think that by seeing Colin Kaepernick on that screen next to Serena Williams, next to the French French soccer team, next to these other heroes, that we're able to maybe have a different conversation. LeBron James, because if we can have all that happening at one time, the American people can sway. Because remember, in the same way that Nike is a corporation, so is the NFL. And if the NFL can be convinced that the fans and the general public want something different, then maybe they will yield on this. Look, I want the NFL to have good politics. I want the NFL to have good feelings. But more importantly, I want justice. I want people to stop dying at the hands of police. I want people to stop being incarcerated because of the color of their skin and because of their economic situation. And if the NFL can have any part in that, even if it's just bringing Colin Kaepernick back into the league, and not just Kaepernick, but Reed and everyone else who's been blackball, if they can just do that, we might be able to shift the conversation the same way Muhammad Ali was able to help shift the conversation on Vietnam along with King and others. So yes, I am hopeful. I'm not optimistic, but I'm full of hope that this thing might change.
Well, let's continue to have that conversation. We're out of time today, but that doesn't mean it's the last word. Mark Lamont Hill, Dante Stallworth, really appreciate it. Thank you.